Welcome back to Anime Lockdown. I welcome Erica Friedman. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure to be here. I've been watching the panels today. Some of you may see me in the comments, and it's been a real pleasure. And I hope all of you got to see the French Revolution Rose of Versailles panel earlier. And John Paul, I just want to say that Ryoko Ikeda-sensei will have her lawyers come over and to talk to you about your pronunciations.
Uh-oh.
So, okay, here we go. Let me just take a sip of water. Okay, so today we're going to be talking, this is based very closely to a video I just recently did. So I might, if you've watched me before recently, you may very well hear some return content. But I have a couple things I just want to do. A lot of this, my kinds of things that I say are not really relevant for this, but I will say this. When we do the Q&A at the end, ask me what I think of an anime at your own risk, because I will tell you, and if it was your favorite, I don't want you to hurt you in person, but it may happen. So I think that's it. I'm focusing mostly on printed matter today. Not that there isn't a lot of interesting Yuri anime, but because a lot of those are based on the light novels and manga that we are talking about. So it's not that I'm saying anime is not worth it. We'll talk about series that, of course, you will know the anime for. And I just think that this is not the end all and be all. It's just my starting off point. So all that said, we're going to begin with the beginning. So let's go. Book. Where it began. So this story actually begins in 1919, actually begins a little bit earlier than 1919. In the early part of the 20th century, on the left, you'll see Yana Uranori Shoujo by a woman named Yoshina Buko. Yoshia was a young woman growing up in fairly rural-ish Japan, and she wanted to be a writer, and she wanted to move to the big city and become a writer, and her father said unequivocally no, so she ran away and ended up being the richest woman in Japan in her lifetime because she was a writer. Her story, Yana Uranori Shoujo, codified a lot, almost all of the tropes you have ever seen in Yuri. Almost all of them come from here, and there are things that you'd be not even thinking twice about, like piano duets. Like, why does Yumi and Sachiko play the piano duet? Or why is there a piano duet in Cream Lemon Escalation Hentai? Like, it doesn't even make sense. Why would there be a piano duet? It's because of this book. This and Otome no Minato in the middle, and Sakura Namiki on the right. In the early part of the 20th century, these were emblematic of girls' culture. And girls' culture was, to some extent, manufactured by the publishing companies that published girls' magazines, but also they were very organic because the girls themselves wrote in what they wanted to see and wanted to write. And artists and writers launched their careers, including Yoshina Buko, by writing in scenarios and short stories, letters, poems to these magazines. And a lot of the things that we think about even today, even as the tropes are breaking and being trashed on purpose, a lot of this all started here. So we're going to start there, but then we're going to take a massive jump to the 1970s. We're looking at this as a proto-Yuri manga. And I call it proto because Yuri didn't exist, not as such. There was no such thing when this magazine was published. It's called Shiroi no Futari by Yamagishi Ryoko, who is actually more well-known in Japan as an artist, as a fine artist. In this panel, what I want you to do is take a look at some of the key elements that made sort of established Yuri. So we have Shiroi no Futari, Our White Room, and we have two characters who you will instantly recognize from a million manga and anime after them. Somebody who's wide-eyed and innocent and cheerful, and then someone who's sort of dark-haired and, Nadeshiko, beauty, intense long hair, very intense eyes, probably emotionally fractured, certainly very intense. It's in a far-off kingdom, and in this far-off kingdom is somewhere else, this far-off exotic location, in this case, France. And they have intense emotional connection that becomes something more. And it takes place in an academy in this far-off location, a girls' school with a high attic room. And you're going to look at this. Hopefully you're all looking at this and going, oh yeah, I totally know this story, right? You know this story. It's all tropes. It's all the tropes. It's like Simone and Racine become friendly, but their emotions are more than friends trope, and during the school play trope, right? They kiss. And this story is the basic kernel of what we think of as Yuri for, I don't know, another 80 years. So let's break down on this a bit. This couple is so emblematic of Yuri that even those couples that don't conform physically, there's still echoes. And those that do sometimes don't make sense. For instance, some of you may be familiar with the current hit series, Citrus. Citrus has a character, May, who is emotionally flaming dumpster fire, and there's Yuzu, who is this super cute gal, and it doesn't make them falling in love doesn't make any sense, and May never smiles. We're like, I think at volume, 12, 14 now, and we're in Citrus Plus in Japan. She doesn't smile. I think she might have quirked her lip up once in one chapter. She's this character all over again. So this happens to be where we start. And what happened in the 2000s, though, to this couple is not just an endless reiteration of the stereotype. And that was sort of interesting. In the 2000s and 2010s, the emotionally intense character actually starts becoming sort of mentally unstable. And her emotional intensity will stem from things like abuse or, as the worst written manga says, neglect, which never makes any sense. So this particular trope hasn't fared all that well, but there's hope, and that's good. So here's our other main, did it move again? Man, this panel just moves. I'll go back to the last one. This panel is the girl prince. And I'm sure, certainly if you've watched the Rose of Versailles thing, you recognize Oscar, you recognize Utena, and maybe you don't recognize the other two, so we'll go over them. At the bottom left corner is Sapphire, Ribbon no Kishi, that's by Tezuka Osamu. And this is the first girl prince in manga. And I don't want to say the first girl prince, because there's actually a Heian period piece of literature called the Torikai Baya Monogatari, which is pretty much the first girl prince. But for our purposes, we'll start with Sapphire, Ribbon no Kishi. And what we got from Sapphire was the sense that as a prince, she was always holding herself to very high standards of behavior. She wanted to be girly, but for various reasons, very incredibly sexist now reasons, she couldn't be girly. And so she had the heart of a boy, which made her brave. As soon as they took that out, she became like totally fawning and useless, which was, sexist. But she gave birth to this concept of the girl prince. You also may notice she looks a lot like Snow White, and that's because she looked a lot like Snow White. And then we got Oscar, and Lady Oscar, François Desjardins, in Rose of Versailles. Some of you may know that I have been doing the editing for the manga from Udon. So I've just spent the last couple of years inside Oscar's head. And she's an amazing character. And I have to tell you, the more of Rose of Versailles that I read and watched and thought about and delved into the history of, the more impressed I was with Ikeda Sensei's work. She wrote about characters, about gender and sexuality in ways that even in the 70s, very few people were really addressing. She did it in ways that even the folks that were doing early Proto-BL and Proto-yuri were not doing. She was really thinking about it. Oscar struggles. She wrestles with this idea of enjoying male privilege and male clothing, and also feeling like a woman and wanting to be understood and to understand what being a woman is. And there's actual discussions of that. And I'm going to tell you, if you're not reading the Udon version of it, you really should. And I'm not just saying because I edited it. It's really amazing. When my generation were children, which is a long time ago now, we were still being told that the girl prince saves the princess. But I know I wasn't the only one who wanted to do the saving. And what happens with the girl prince is she is the embodiment of everything I grew up wanting to be. So after Oscar, we got Utena, and a lot of the work that Ikuhara does harken back to Rose of Versailles and other Ikeda works like Dear Brother, which is also out from Discotheque and also stunning. But more importantly, what I think is interesting about the Girl Prince is that she's become a lasting embodiment. And on the right, what you're going to see here is a picture from the manga for I'm in Love with the Villainess, Watashi no Oji wa Akujaku Reijo. In this scene, Rei, the protagonist, imagines sweeping the villainess off her feet and is super excited about it. She's like, I will do it. And what you see in the next panel, which I did not pick on purpose, is the two of them back to back, clearly as Anshi and Utena. So I just love that picture. And I love this idea that Utena has rewritten this concept of the Girl Prince wholly. And honestly, in 1999, when we were talking and waiting for Utena to land here in the United States, I don't think we could have ever imagined what an impact it was going to have. It was an extraordinary story that set a whole new set of precedents. We hadn't ever seen a series as frank about sexuality and yet as relatable, because we all knew, like, the asshole guy who hit on all the girls. Like, everybody knew that character in high school. So I thought that was a really amazing thing. I'm going to do a deep dive one day video on this concept completely. But the bottom line is that the longevity of this concept and the fact that even now on Pixiv every year, you'll see a hashtag go by called the Yuri Sekai no Charisma, which is a hashtag given specifically to Haruka Michiru from Sailor Moon, to Sailor Uranus and Sailor Neptune, pictures of them in love. I gotta tell you, that's kind of a fairly good longevity on a hashtag. It comes back every year, and there's amazing art if you want to look at that. It's great stuff. The Girl Prince and now her equally lovely consort are both competent, and they represent everything we hope to be and everything we hope to have. So I think the Girl Prince is an amazing, dynamic, ever-changing, and ongoing, fantastic trope for us. Yep, I got to go backwards because this moved every time. So in 2002, there was an anime called Azumanga Daioh. I hope some of you remember it. And in it, there was a character named Kaorin. And Kaorin was in love with Sakaki-san, who was cool and didn't talk much. She was just this cool, the cold, silent type, right? And in one episode, Kaorin has a dream that this is the dream. She has this dream with wedding bells and the rainbow jets. And I thought it was hilarious. I mean, I thought it was really funny that, this idea that she would marry Sakaki. She also has another dream later on where she is carried off on horseback by Sakaki as her prince. So I thought that was great. And we started seeing this trope at that time of Yuri weddings. And I call them Yuri weddings and not lesbian weddings because there was no lesbians in Yuri at the time. Like, none of the characters, not one of these characters on this page, on this slide, are lesbian. You have stories where we have a Cinderella play and the prince comes and runs off with Cinderella, and we have this fake wedding sort of vow thing in Strawberry Panic where the étoile swears her love to her partner. I can't think of a worse partner than Nagisa, but that's just me. And on the upper right, you have, toward the late 2000s, you had things like Murashima Akiko had a story, which we haven't gotten yet, called Joshika, Renai Joshika. And in it is a series of women who are working at a bridal salon, and they start doing like shoots to do these like two women marriages sort of thing. And on the left of that picture, it's the one on the right top corner, you can see one of the characters screaming because her girlfriend is in this photo shoot with her ex, and, get over it. And then, of course, at the bottom right, you see Iono-sama, who is the queen of a foreign nation, and she goes out to get consorts and comes home and takes her consort, and nobody will ever leave her kingdom because they love it so much. So what you have is this concept that that a faux wedding might be something aspirational, I guess is what I'm saying. It's fantastic. It's not real in Japan. Even today, they have no marriage equality. But having this idea with, being this romantic ideal of a wedding starts to really take root in the late 2000s. And we're still seeing some pieces of that today. And again, I bring in I'm in Love with the Villainess. And we're going to keep talking about that endlessly because it was an amazing story and you all should be reading. So there's a series called Fufu that has not been translated yet. And it's by a man named Minamoto Hizunari. And he wrote a story in 2011 and 12 about two women who move in together and they are fufu. They are wife and wife. And that story kind of takes the whole wedding thing and says, look at the piece we're missing, right? So there's these two people, they have their lives together. They have a relationship that's going on. They're making a family. They have friends they bring into the family. And at the end, they have a wedding and they make rings for each other and they exchange rings. And the thing is, we're talking about like 2012 and still almost 10 years later, weddings are not recognized. Although there is change in Japan, some areas of Japan, mostly individual cities and towns and one or two prefectures actually allow same-sex partnerships. So there is slow motion towards that, but it's not quite the same. What we don't really have at this point, even though there's anthologies like Bride's Anthology and a wedding anthology called Yuricon, which was Yurikekon, Yuri Marriage, Yuricon. What we don't have is a lot of openly queer characters yet. So then in the early, late 2010s, I guess, I think we're at 2010s, you started seeing something interesting. And the thing that I think is the most interesting about this particular thing, Yuri manga with adults, is that from 2005, there has been a consistent single Yuri manga magazine. It was started in 2003, but since 2005, it's been Komikuri Hime. And they went quarterly, then bi-monthly, then now they're monthly. And so since the early 2000s, you've had a magazine that's just Yuri manga. And in some periods of time, you have more than one. And that means that younger people were growing up in the 2000s going, oh, you mean I could just draw a Yuri manga? I don't need to draw manga first and get an established thing and then pick, do a girl's love story. I could just draw a Yuri manga. So they grew up. And like every single person ever in the history of the world, you grow up and you start thinking, gosh, I'm really tired of schoolgirls. God almighty, I really don't want to see another story about them falling in love and kissing once, and that's the end. And so we had, at the end of the 2010s, Shakaijin Yuri. Shakaijin is adult, let's call it productive members of society. And so now you have Yuri with women in the workplace, adult women with their own lives. And I want to point out something really critically interesting and important about this panel. These are all out in English. And to me, that was the changeover. It was literally 2018 or 19. I think it was 2018. And by 2019, which was the 100 years of Yuri anniversary year, we had every major and most minor publishers in both Japan and America doing Yuri manga. And all of these are from major publishers. So you have Yen Press and you have Seven Seas. Viz is doing some Yuri. J Novel Club's putting out Yuri. Manga Planet's got some Shikaijin Yuri. And they've got the really good stuff because Manga Planet has all the Shodensha, which is the josei, the adult women writing for adult women manga. So that's really good. And there's, of course, tons and tons of people online on Pixiv and on Twitter. And there's Galette magazine, which we'll get to in a second. So you have adult manga by adults who grew up in a world where you could just write Yuri as about adults by adults. I really think this is a critically important key change in the last 100 years. And it's been literally within the last 5. So very, very fascinating. And I definitely recommend going to Manga Planet and going and looking at their micro novels, which are literally meant to be read on a phone. So they're like 3 lines per page. You just read it as you're commuting. And also some of the Shudensha stuff. They have some of Uni's work and a few other writers I really like. So that's 2021. And if I ask you to name Yuri media with openly gay characters, openly queer, openly lesbian, openly trans characters, how many can you think of? A couple, right? There's some. I mean, certainly there's the stuff that's come out, but are these characters openly gay? Do they ever use the word lesbian? Do they ever say, Mom, I'm queer? Actually, I married my best friend to shut my parents up? Almost. There's Gunjo, Free Soul, Transit Girls, my lesbian experience with loneliness, and all of the stories that come after that. But the fact is that you have to think about it to come up with a number of really openly queer characters. So the US has marriage equality now. A lot of other countries do. Japan is slowly moving its way forward. And what we're looking for right now is queer manga. Queer characters in our Yuri manga. And this is important to me. I mean, this is not, and this goes beyond just, I'll be honest, beyond just Yuri for me. If you haven't read it, it's not relevant to this panel, but Boys Run the Riot is about bi and about a trans man. And the entire localization team is trans. And Kodansha was like, woohoo about it. Now that's a huge sea change from the, oh gosh, yeah, Haruka Michiro, but we won't talk about them. Like that's, that was the past. This is now, we're like, look at this. So we have openly queer writers writing openly lesbian manga. And that is so unique. And now you'll notice we don't have as much in English yet, but don't worry. There's things are changing. My lesbian experience with loneliness by Nagata Kabi. She did also my Soul Exchange Diary 1 and 2 and my Alcoholic Escape from Reality. And now she's got Meito Senshi, so was it Wandering Warrior, Nagata Kabi, and there's a couple more. She's still working on it. And this is really critical because it also brought in comic essays to American manga shelves, where somebody was writing an autobiographical essay about their lives. And hers was the lowest low-key coming out I have ever heard in my life. It was like, yeah, I'll hug anybody, but if it was doing anything more, it would have to be a woman. The end, that was her coming out. And she did it like way early in her first manga. And then it's just a given. And the next one coming out, she'll be talking a lot more about her gender and her sexuality and her gender identity and presentation. And I think a lot of us are going to be really able to identify with some of the stuff she's saying. Gunjo is something I mentioned, and I love this cover because it's a beautiful piece of fine art that makes people recoil with horror. It's a great, I love this manga more than anything else, and I am editing it. It's not coming out in a volume. It's out in chapter form on Nakamura Ching's Note site at note.mu. And it's only in chapter form right now because she got kind of derailed with another project, and you may have heard of it. It was on Netflix. It's a movie called Read or Die. No, not Ride or Die. And I keep doing that. Sorry, Read or Die is a different thing. Ride or Die. Ride or Die is a movie based on Gunjo. And it was on Netflix. And I'm going to warn you with two things. Both the sex and the violence are very, very explicit and extensive. And yet, I think it's worth watching. It's not the manga. The end is different, and a lot of other pieces are different, but I think there's enough of it that it's worth seeing. So you don't have the manga Gunjo in whole yet, but you do have the movie Ride or Die. And on the right is one of my other favorite mangaka who's out. Her name is Takamija, and she's been around forever. She writes for Galette magazine. She's done work for Komagiri Hime. She does a lot of her own stuff right now. She does a lot of work on Pixiv. And she's got one of the queerest sets of characters. Like, her characters are usually, at least one character in the story is usually openly gay, openly queer, or openly lesbian. She has characters who say, I'm lesbian, which is still very unusual in Yuri manga. Okay, so we have this. And now I want to talk about another major sea change. It's really kind of a huge thing here. Is light novels. We're getting a lot of Yuri light novels. And there's a story here. I want to tell you the subtext of this slide is read more science fiction. There's a lot of great science fiction novels in both Japanese and English. And probably you're all expecting this. If you haven't read the Locked Tomb series, Gideon the Ninth, Hera the Ninth, go do that. Just trust me, if you haven't already done it. Roll Over and Die is sort of a fantasy guru isekai thing. It's not technically an isekai, I don't think. I don't think the characters woke up there. Anyway, Girls' Kingdom is not an isekai, but it is totally not this world. It's just completely crazy fantasy shit. It's in this ridiculous school for ridiculously rich girls, and it's absurd. It's hilarious. Sexile is an isekai, and it's really good. And you should totally, I guess it's high fantasy, RPG, not isekai. And it's totally great. And Other Side Picnic is another sci-fi novel. That one it's sci-fi / horror. So it's a little on the dark side. Totally worth reading. Fantastic writer. And Yuri is a slow burn. So give it some time. Don't be like, what? That nothing happened. No, not yet. And in the middle, I'm in love with the villainess. And I hope you're in the chat right now going, best story ever, because it really is the best story ever. It is an isekai for a classic. Ray Taylor is reborn from our world. Her name was Ohashi Ray. She died here, and we don't really know how, which I kind of like. It's sort of implied that she worked at a black company, but also kind of not. And black company being the kind that you do too much unpaid overtime, and woke up in this world where it's the world of her favorite otame game. And she is the protagonist now, and she's overpowered and blah, 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 knows all the stories. So there we go. It starts off as a very goofy gay comedy, and it quickly becomes an openly queer story. And as the volumes have gone on, it's getting gayer, queerer. So you have, I think volume 3 is available here in English now. Volume 4 has yet to come out, and that also is incredibly queer and absolutely insane. It's fantastic. It's like there's no rules on the table. Like, so the artist just throws it all at the wall and all of it sticks. It's hilarious. And I hope you'll read some of that. Okay. And I want to real quick, just want to talk about this. Right now there's 2 Yuri manga magazines in Japan. Comic Yuri Hime is on the left. That's from a couple of years ago now. Totally different. Every year they have a different artist, so a different story is being told on the cover. Right now the cover is literally a novella in 6-point type in Japanese. It's great. And it's a time traveling thing. But this magazine is monthly, and you can get it on Bookwalker, Global Bookwalker, as a subscription. So you can get it in Japanese and be able to read it on your tablet or phone. Recommend tablet over phone. And Galette magazine, which is quarterly, that is crowdfunded, and what's the other thing? Oh, creator owned. That's the other thing. And I think I just want to real quick do this. If you haven't gotten Rosa Versailles, please do. I'm going to also recommend regarding Sayaki Sayaka, because that is also that series, which is a 3-novel side story to Bloom Into You, follows the lesbian character as she grows up and starts to really understand who she is. And it's not like big coming out moments. It's like big, like, oh, fuck this moments. So I really like it. And Our Dreams at Dusk, Shimanami Tasugare, is a story that is LGBTQ by a gender X person. And it's talking about modern Japanese life as a queer person. And I recommend it highly. It's very, very beautiful. And this is where you can find me. And I am going to not stop sharing, but see if I can't pull up the, let's see if I can find you guys on the chat. Okay. So here we are. I hope you've thought of your questions. So let's have them. Let's have your questions. I'm here on the chat and I can watch that. Oh, the cartoon portrait. Thank you. The cartoon portrait is by Marishima Akiko. She and I were at Yuri 10 a few years ago, and she needed to go to Animate in Ikebukuro, and I was staying in Ikebukuro. So I said I'd show her how to go there. And it was Golden Week. And I have never seen that many people in my life. It was absolutely panic making. And so I got her through the station all the way down to Animate. And so she drew me all looking like heroic. So there we go. That's where that is. Yeah. Ideal Yuri story is true. Well, my ideal Yuri story, sports. But give me a long, wait. I want a long-term sports Yuri manga. I don't want like a volume or two. I want like an 18-volume blood and guts. I don't care what sport, but I'd really like it to be something really gay, like ping pong, softball. I'll take rugby would awesome. Swimming, because I was a swimmer when I was a kid. Anything, really. Just give me a really good long-term one. A question. I've been told by some queer folk, Yuri as a term is outdated and problematic. No, that is the opposite. That person, there is a person out there who keeps going, girls love is the real term. They are wrong. Girls love is the publisher's term. I'm the one, I and all the Yuri mangaka, we're the ones who picked Yuri. Girls love is the term that publishers picked because they want an equivalent to boys love in English. So there is a person, a specific person who has some drum they keep banging on this, and they're wrong. So no, it's not an outdated term. It may not be the term we use in 20 years, but girls love is not the correct term. Girls love is the term created in the mid-2000s by publishers. It hasn't gone away in Japan. You'll still see it on OBs or in copy, but it's not the correct term. And there's no such thing as a correct term. It's language. Language is fluid. Okay, so are you familiar with Yuri doujinshi scene? So yeah, of course, I do pay attention to it. A lot of manga series started doujinshi. Doujinshi, actually, Yuri doujinshi has been growing like unbelievably. The last time I was at Komiket, which was in February 2019, pretty much everything I ever did in Japan was the last year was 2019. We went not Komiket, Komitia. Komitia is 3 times a year, and it's all original work. And I like it better than Komiket, which has a lot more parody work. It's not only parody work, but it has a lot more parody work. For Komitia, you have to have a brand new original volume every year, and I love it. And I have discovered a lot of amazing authors, and a lot of them have gone on to success. And it's a different world because of Pixiv now. Pixiv really changed it, and you have Fantia and some of the other things, and of course Twitter, and a lot of the publishing companies are doing that. But at Komitia, every year, a lot of the publishers, particularly in their like less popular magazines, like no one at Wings magazine is going to be hiring you. Like, you can't be selling your doujinshi and somebody's like, oh, I'm from Wings, we'll put it on the cover. That's never going to happen. What you can do is present to Hakusensha or one of the other companies, one of their smaller web magazine or one of their smaller magazines, and they have editorial reviews, which they never used to do. So that's always cool. So that's new and exciting. And yeah, the doujinshi scene is not dead, and it's not gone, and it's super alive and thriving. All right, Sweet Blue Flowers is a beautiful, beautiful anime, and I recommend it highly. It's not the whole story, but I actually didn't think the story ended all that great, so it's okay. Komitia is really a lot of fun. Let's see. I'm not going to agree with you on Symphogear. Sorry. What do I think of Girl Meets Girl? What is that? Kashimashi, the old one? Kashimashi is that what you're talking about? I don't know what you mean, Girl Meets Girl.
I think that's Kashimashi.
Or is there another anime? Because there's a lot of stuff that uses that term. Yes, okay, Kashimashi. It's actually pretty old, right? It's from the early 2000s. It's goofy. A lot of folks I know at the time who are trans folks really, bought into that as representing them. And I totally understand and sympathize. I don't think it was intended as trans representation, but I think it works as trans representation. It's a goofy story. I don't think it's the greatest. I actually like the anime better than the manga. I thought it ended better as an anime. So yeah, it's goofy. I mean, it's a Dengeki Daio story, so it's really not, the audience was not me. If that helps. I'm like any other viewer. I like to watch stuff I want to watch, right? No problem. John, I don't know if John Paul, if there's any other things that I've missed. Oh, real quick, Yuri visual novels. I didn't mention it here. Let me real quick do Yuri visual novels because we do have some time. Yes, they're amazing. Holy crow, I can't stand them so much. And they're so good. And there's so many of them. They're growing every day. Yuri visual novels like VN Studio Elan. Studio Elan is doing absolutely stunning work. They created their own creative engine to build them, and they're doing amazing work. Heart of the Woods, as of this week, is on Switch now. Recommend them highly. Can't stand them for myself. So that's just me. Still Sick is another great Yuri manga. That's another Shikaijin Yuri manga. I'm sorry, if John Paul, if you see anyone
I'm skimming through to see if there's anything that you missed. There's a question that's asking if you have any favorite non-Yuri characters that are well represented.
Non-Yuri,
like characters in non-Yuri anime or manga, but are good representations of
good
LGBT.
representation. Gosh, well, wow, that's a hard one because I have a different perspective than most people. I watch anime, manga, and I understand the way the genres work. So sometimes something isn't really meant as representation, but it ends up being good, but that would only be because I want them to be, which is not what they were intended to be. So for instance, and I like this character, but I don't say she's good representation, is Mary from My Next Life is a Villainess. Mary, I'm on Team Mary 100%, even though the story itself has told us to be on Team Maria. I'm going to tell you, I'm reading the new volume now, and we should be on Team Maria, but I am on Team Mary. And she's a great character, but no, she's not meant to be representative of anything. There is some good stuff in gay manga and queer manga. So like Gaku Keito's Boys Run the Riot, my brother's husband, which is about a gay man and his late husband's brother. So they're not meant those are meant to be representative. But a lot of the stuff out there, you have a character that is not meant to be, and maybe doesn't really work for everybody, but ends up being a better character than maybe they were intended to be. So what's the manga panel behind my head? This one is from Yuri Monogatari. It was a series I published. My manga publishing company, ALC, Ani Lesbo-Con Publishing, was the first Yuri manga publishing company in America. And this is an original piece by Jesse B., and it is an Amazon and Valkyrie breaking through a wall at a house party. And I love this page so much, so I asked her for the actual art. So that's that. Let's see. Yeah, Mary and Maria are so gay. Maria, not really, but yeah, really. And in volume 9, they turn up the notch on that. So yeah, that's really good. They make it really, Maria's like, I'm in love with you, Katarina. Like, it's great. What is my thoughts on Simoon? I think Simoon was genius. I can't even begin to tell you how many people hated it. It's confusing. It has no end. The middle has holes in it. The world building has giant gaping holes in it. It's perfect because that's how it was meant to be. I thought it was great. A lot of people didn't like it. I think it's great. Tell us apart. Hi, Ashley. Tell us a part of Hana no Asagagumi. All right, so this is all of it. This is Ashley being funny. So there's this story called Hana no Asagagumi. Real quick, if you've ever heard me talk, I talk about it all the time. It's at this point, I think it's something in the 50 volume range. And it's got 5 series, 4 television series, 2 movies, a bunch of drama CDs, and nobody but Ashley and I have ever heard of it. I love it. It's a gang girl story. The piece of it that I love the best is every time the character Yoko came back, she would beat the crap out of Asuka, and that's how they showed their love for each other. That's my favorite. All of it is really. I mean, no, because then there's Hibari-sama, and always still, it's 30 years later, still trying to seduce Asuka. So I think it's all great. Just to say, Simoon is a great sci-fi Yuri, but it is consciously built with a lot of holes in the world building. So many of the things that you think, why, there is no answer. If you can let that go and just go with it, it's fantastic. So Ashley, I love you so much. We will ever get something like Grand Stage again. Again, you may not know Grand Stage. For Grand Stage, rather than tell you every single thing, I recommend going to Okazu and looking up Grand Stage. It was a series of drama CDs, like the BL CDs that are very popular. So most of you should know about the BL CDs. They are drama CDs where the character's talking to you as their partner. And so they're being sexy and loving and kind. And a lot of those are meant to be between two guys. But the audience is generally female. So you might have two guys talking, or you might have them talking to you as whatever kun, and you just are putting yourself sort of in their head. Grand Stage is the same thing, only there's like 3 layers of gender mindfuck. It is women who are great voice actresses. They're like top name voice actresses playing women who play men professionally on the stage as otokoyaku in a review troupe called Grand Stage. And it's stunning. It's stunning. I don't know if we'll ever get anything like that again. I can't imagine, but it's brilliant. Let's see. What was the most formative Yuri manga, formative Yuri series for me? Absolutely no question. It was Sailor Moon. And then Utena. And Sailor Moon because it was on TV and I was watching a tape of it, a VHS tape of it. That's how old I am. And Ogata Megumi-san says, "Hey." And I fell off the sofa. I was like, holy shit, who is she? I need to have her. And that was my, digging the giant hole of Sailor Moon fandom that just never ends and forever go on. And then Utena, because I was reading the movie manga of Utena, and towards the end of the movie manga, which is in the Viz collection, Anshi turns to Utena and says, "Come with me to the outside world." And I realized that was the same ending as Yana Ura no Ni Shoujo by Yoshino Buko. And suddenly I realized I was looking at a literary and artistic history that went back all those years, and most American fans didn't know about it. And I became obsessed with this idea that I wanted to learn all the connections. I wanted to read all the originals, and I wanted to write about them and tell people, look, this thing didn't come out of thin air. This thing that you're looking at and going, wow, that's fun. This has like a freaking 50-year or 80-year or 100-year literary history. And so that was when I started all of this research. So that was really good. Question. My earlier part of characters who weren't meant to be representation by the creators, but end up being so. Can I think of any authors who, I actually, not in this panel, if you gave me time to think about it, I might be able to think of authors who took the reader feedback to heart and applied it, but not right here on the fly. Sorry. Sailor Moon on VHS Club, VKL. That's good. What's my least favorite Yuri anime? I don't know if you could hear it, but my wife just screamed, "Citrus!" I really hated Citrus so much. I really, really didn't like it. I just didn't. It wasn't my favorite, for sure. Ice was not my least favorite. It just made no sense. I laughed. Honestly, Ice was perfect because it made no fucking sense. Oh, it was great. My wife's on point. Citrus has got a lot of problems. Citrus has all the weight of the years of Racine and Simone and all this body of this heavy, this Nadeshiko beauty and this goofy Genki girl and all of the weight of that, and it does absolutely nothing with it and just layers on the garbage-est possible explanations for all of their behavior. May is that way because she's neglected by her mother. What? She has all the hallmarks of a sexually abused kid. What the hell? I can't even. So Yamibo was not a good anime except for the bits that were really good, and Kanazuki no Mika, which for a long time I didn't like until I listened to the last of the drama CDs, which I know none of you have listened to, so it's not meaningful to you. Kanazuki no Miko is so much better when you listen to the last drama CD and you get all the stupid bullshit that they didn't ever put into the anime, and then you get the thing about the baseball game and all this other nonsense, and it's funny and brilliant. Made so much better. No, the citrus manga is not better. It's just a different garbage fire. So, yeah, there you go. The Sword of Dios is the thing about Utena, and this is why it was so key. First of all, it was the first real move into popularizing a real non-shonen, specifically shonen manga. It was deeply, deeply rooted in shoujo. There was tons of Ryoko Ikeda references. There was tons of early shoujo references. And then you took the music that was like a magical quick on acid, and then you took all of the BL and the Yuri, and then you threw it in with, a little incest and some other things for fun, a lot of manipulation. And CPM was putting it out here and really pushing it. And I actually traveled with it to a bunch of film festivals and introduced all these queer people to anime with it. So there is a lot to go. I mean, you could just go endlessly. I did a massive, I don't know, like 3,500 word essay on it, which is all coming out in my book, which I should probably plug. Next summer, I am a book on Yuri coming out called By Your Side, 100 years, the first 100 years of Yuri anime manga. And I hope you will absolutely pick that up. Okay, so if you could snap your fingers and localize one Yuri series to English. Okay, so here's the thing. I have already had that chance. Rose of Versailles. It's there. It's on my shelves. It should be on your shelves. And Gunjo, which we are working on. So what else is there? I don't know. We have I'm in Love with the Villainess. There's just so much really good stuff that's out already. But if I had to pick one, we're never going to get it as Shorehand of Futari. And the reason we're never going to get it is because classic manga does not sell all that well. And I understand why. I mean, the art style is different. I'd love to see something like Applause translated. Nobody would buy it. It's a crazy pants story, but it's about a woman who grows up in Belgium at a girls' school, falls in love with her best friend. The friend has like a complete mental breakdown, goes running off. She ends up going to New York to become a modern dancer on Broadway. And this is all true. And there's a lot of really great dance stuff. And there's all this other stuff in between. There's all this dance stuff. And then the friend comes back and they fall in love again. But then it's like on again, off again. And the friend's become an alcoholic and a drug user. And it's crazy. And then they star in a Broadway musical hit together. And then they disappear. The end is very vague. It's fantastic. So Applause is pretty fantastic. Let's see. Okay, we have somebody being a jerk. Excellent. I feel better about that. There has to be a heckler.
There's somebody. I didn't notice that. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Poppy, if you could take care of that, thank you.
No, somebody. Apparently, the system already took. I have no idea what they were doing.
Oh, perfect.
So it's good. It's fine. Oh yeah, and Poppy took care of the link for Udon Entertainment. So.
The links have been getting auto flagged. They're mentioning that there was a missed question. I think it was about
I'm sorry.
If you see, because Yuri tropes have been fairly consistent over the history, if you see them evolving anytime soon.
Absolutely. I'm in Love with the Villainess is a really good example. All the Shikaijin Yuri is a really good example. What you see now is those tropes breaking down. So in fact, let me talk about I'm in Love with the Villainess for like 11 minutes. We have a series out there that is really taking all those tropes and going, and I love that. So what's happened with I'm in Love with the Villainess is it's a woman who is an adult in our world who has never, ever really had that conversation with herself. Like, am I gay? What do I want out of my life? And she loses herself in this otome game where you have to get a prince, of course. And when she is reborn into the game, she's like, screw the princes. I want the villainess. And she starts rewriting the game. Now she knows what's going to happen. She's played it over and over and over. She's read all the character stuff. She's read what the designers have done. She's played all the side games. She has all the knowledge. And so what she does is the whole book is subverting all those tropes. And if you've read the first bit, you'll know she immediately jumps into running up to the villain and going, please tease me. And the villain is completely like, whoa, like, who would want that? And so we start immediately subverting all those otome shoujo tropes. But what happens in book 2 is more significant. I think the key moment is in book 2. And I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it is right at the very beginning. When all of the rules of everything are thrown out the window and everything changes. And I feel like that's the key piece. And to me, it really it's acknowledged the end of a lot of tropes. And then you still see those old tropes. Obviously, citrus is never going away. And I think that there's room for doing that trope of the Nadeshiko beauty and the Genki girl. I would like to see somebody take that and go, let's talk about why the Nadeshiko beauty is so emotionally fractured. I actually did an article about that too, about unstable mental instability in lesbianism in Yuri manga. I would love somebody to go, the reason Simone was throwing herself into bars and getting drunk every night and then is because she was so sexually frustrated. She was not out. She probably had an abusive family member, or certainly they had dumped her in the school. And so, at the end, when she realizes she's in love with Racine and can't be with her, she goes into a bar, gets drunk, and dies in a knife fight, which is a classic lesbian mid-century pulp trope, which I loved. And I know nobody understood it but me. I thought it was brilliant. And I don't mean nobody understood. I mean, like, I actually am old enough to have read the mid-century stuff and then, actually recognized it when I saw it. So I think you could do a really good story about Yaya in Strawberry Panic and Simone and Sachiko and why is this character so, let's be honest about it. Is it sexual abuse? Is it just they're not okay? Let's find out about what it is that's making this character so emotionally intense. And we find out, like in Maria Sama ga Miteru, we find out why Sachiko is the way she is. And it makes perfect sense. That one they handle really well, but hardly anyone ever handles that character well. I think that's why I think Citrus is a dumpster fire, because we've got May acting classically like all the signs of a sexually abused kid. But we say she was neglected. What is that? So it's just garbage. What is my favorite Yuri mouse pad? I'm sorry, I don't have a Yuri mouse pad. Sorry about that. Is there a better Yuri anime moment than when they do the episode preview and Marimita rapping? Yes. Although that one was exceptional. On the drama CD for Rainy Blue, which I know none of you have listened to, but it's okay. You'll have to trust me. Rainy Blue ends. And a year later, they did the drama CD for Parasolo Sashita, which is the end of that arc. And so the voice actresses who, by now, I guess this is like 2008 or 9, maybe 2010, they had all read all of the books. They were all massive fans. They were obsessively fan of them. They were giving other actresses, people on the staff, everybody. So some of the drama CDs are basically them all sitting around talking about the most recent book, which was brilliant. So now they haven't seen each other in a year, and they finished Parasol Sashita, which is where Yumi and Sachiko make up. And at the end, Ito Miki in the bonus track, Ito Miki says, talking about Sachiko, how when she finally got to talk with Yumi again, she was so happy, and she was like, "Oh, I love you, Yumi." And Kano Ueda Kana, immediately, at that moment, as Yumi goes, "I love you too, Ine-sama," and everybody in the room goes, "Oh, I don't want to see that. Oh, I stop that." And we all go, and I was screaming in the car. I'm screaming. I'm like, that's even better than the Marimita rapping. So there you go.
I had a question, actually.
Yeah.
So you mentioned it in passing during this panel, and I've seen you talk about it briefly on Twitter, that you were there on the ground floor when Yuri was decided as the name of the genre. I'd love to hear more about that and how it went down.
That was the most surreal day of my life. So what happened was I ran Yuricon in 2003 here in New Jersey, and it was great. And in 2005, I wanted to do something different. So I was talking to Rika Takashima, who has been with me through this whole process. I met her in 2002, and we have been doing this together, and she's doing the cover art from the book that I'm writing. So we have been together right through the very end of this. She and I decided that we're going to do an event in Tokyo, Yuricon 2005 in Tokyo, and she invites a lot of the Yuri mangaka I've been talking about, Murashima Akiko, and novelist Brango da Natsuko Mori, and just a lot of lesbian stars at the time. And we all got together in this bar in Shinjuku Nichome and had an event. And it was great. We had a great time. But at the end of the day, and I know people use that as a thing, but at the end of that day, specifically, we all sat around and we talked about, we had a publisher who would eventually just go on to launch Comic Yurihime at the time. And he was said, how's that name? We all went, it's okay. It's better than Yurishimai. But he was asking us, like, what do you want to see? And we're like, stories about women together, like not stories where there's one lesbian character as a crush, as a best friend, or not these fake things. We would like to see real actual emotion. And he did take it to heart. And he's still the editor-in-chief of Comic Yurihime. But we all sat around saying, what do we want to call this genre? How do we want for it to be approached? And I said, one of our guests was Ito Bungaku, who was the guy who created Barazoku, where Yurizoku was coined. He was one of our special guests and a lovely man. He had coined Yurizoku because Barazoku was the Rose tribe for gay men and Yurizoku was the Lily tribe for lesbian men. And I said I wanted to call the genre Yuri to connect it to the lesbian history of Yurizoku. And everyone was like, yeah, okay, that works. And we basically decided in that room at that time, this is what the genre is called. And we understand that the girls' love thing makes more sense for Japanese publishers because boys' love is so well established as a genre. It makes perfect sense for them here. I would still prefer to stick with Yuri for now until we get something better. I know language changes, but in my opinion, Yuri always connects us back to lesbian history. And that's the thing that I want to make sure we're going forward into modeling a queerer future for Yuri.
It's an incredible story.
Thank you.
I love how so many of these come down to, well, we were in a bar and, it's just, I don't know, it's wonderful. I love those really organic moments.
Honest to God, I'll tell you this, having been in this industry or peripheral to this industry one way or another for 20 years now, that is actually how it works. So I know you've heard this a lot from a lot of people. I know Helen talked about this, but I'm going to tell you that if you want to make it in any industry, the number one skill you can work on is networking. Mm-hmm. Because I'm faking it. Like I'm faking it all the time. I'm an introvert. I'm a geek. I'm like all of us. And I fake it because I have a really good teacher. My mother was a genuine extrovert, which is really, really distressing when you're near them. But she basically, when I would get completely like frozen, I think, what would she do? I'd be like, oh, hi, I'm Erica. You fake it. You learn to talk with people. And my personal advice is when you realize you're talking too much, ask a question real quick. What do you think? It changes a lot of dynamics.
I'll have to use that one.
Yeah.
We have time for maybe one more question if they have it. Otherwise, if you want to just promote your work one more time.
Okay, so I do my blog, Okazu, 4 to 6 times a week. I usually give myself Tuesdays off. Sometimes I take off a few other days a week. I do a news report every day. Today you got this week the news report. All of our history, a lot of our interviews, some of the book that we did is our book for Yuricon 2005. We had essays by writers and creators of Yuri. They're on the Yuricon essays page. I recommend it highly. It's called What Yuri Means to Me. The Yuricon store is the biggest store on the internet of all just Yuri stuff, and I basically just take time and put stuff in there. We have a Discord. It's the Okazu Discord, and feel free. And I am on Twitter, and I have the world's worst Instagram. don't expect much. It's basically what I'm reading when I feel like putting it up there. Also, I have a Patreon. If you go to Okazu today, you'll see the link to it. We really absolutely can always use your assistance. It helps fund our guest writers who are now being paid industry standard. And we have a lot of guest writers coming up. So a lot of cool guest stuff. We have new content. The patrons are also going to get a free copy, an e-copy of the book when that comes out. And also the Yuri Studio reviews, which I forgot to put in there. I do videos on YouTube as Yuri Studio. I'm doing a lot of what you saw today was based on one of those videos, historical stuff, and also ideas from my patrons. So if you become a patron, you actually get a lot more, hey, you should do this. Oh, okay. So there we go.
I'm being told the Discord link is broken, so maybe post on Twitter
I'll post on Twitter the Discord link. I'm sorry. Actually, you don't even need me. If you go to Yuricon, hang on a second. Let me just go over here and I'm going to actually do a little fucking around here. If you go on, I'm going to just grab this real quick and get I'll do it. But if you go on Yuricon to the links page, it's there too.
Okay.
So you don't need me even.
Well, I really appreciate you joining us this year.
It was my pleasure, really. It's been an absolute joy to be part of this. All right. I'm writing it down right now, but I'm pretty sure it's the same exact one. So. Okay. Let me just throw it in the chat here. I am on the chat. There we go. It stopped me from posting.
That's okay. Poppy will take care of it. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
If you go to Yuricon. So there we go. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate you catching me on Twitter.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.